powerful psychedelic in the universe. A 5-MeO malt trip by Triptonautical, posted to the Psychonauts subreddit 4 years ago. To preface, this has been by far, unquestionably, the most profound, impactful experience of my existence. And I may ramble when I write this, because I'm still trying to piece together my own existence. I'm also posting this because 5-MeO malt seems to be a very underappreciated substance, and it deserves more visibility. There seem to be very few trip reports about it. I hope this fills a bit of that gap. I sit down with my small bowl of 10 milligrams of 5-MeO malt. I tell my dad, my trip partner, that I'm going to try and vocalize what I experienced to him, which didn't work, of course. I breathe deeply a few times, expecting for a reasonably intense experience. Joke's on me, I'm about to get fucked. I start pulsing my trusty Yokan Evolve, quick pulses repeatedly, as I count in my head. I inhale for about a minute, and by the end, colours are starting to shift and merge in the same way that it did before in my past experiences. I breathe out a large cloud of smoke, thinking, shit, I guess I didn't hold it in long enough. My breathing starts to get heavier and heavier. The merging of oddly shaped colours starts to take over my visual field, but I begin to see patterns within them for a brief moment. This continues to intensify over the next minute. My breathing continues to get harder as things amplify. There were no beings, no objects of any sort. There were some amorphous shapes, but then my vision started to triple, quadruple, and begin to overlap. This has happened in my last trip, so again, it wasn't too unusual, but then it continued. Jesus Christ. After another minute or so, my entire sense of self had disintegrated. This has never happened on any of my DMT trips, only once on 5-MeO DMT. But this was different. Instead of disintegrating into nothing, I felt like I disintegrated into everything, and I was able to experience the existence of my consciousness within this space that I was in, or rather was seeing. No longer was this the usual predominantly visual experience that I have with psychedelics. The visuals were now in the back seat, as whatever thing I was solely trying to make sense of everything. The movements were not frantic like DMT, but slow, calm, and very soothing. The entire experience was quite peaceful, despite my own inner mind trying to catch up. Thoughts stopped at some point, and I just was. I felt like my entire reality, of which I had no sense of me or reality, had melted down into some fundamental base, and my consciousness was experiencing it for what it was. I can only now have vague memories of what anything looked like. I felt like I was experiencing being in its truest form. I'm not sure if this is the universe is everything, I'm the universe kind of thing that I read all over Reddit. I never really understood that from other trip reports, and I tried to find that amidst all the psychedelics I've done. But this seems like the closest I've gotten to any sense of unity. I guess you could say, there was but one. I was one. Welcome back to life. After this moment, which lasted probably a minute or two, I eventually was able to make some visual recollection of the space that I was in to some degree. I somehow managed to speak, which I was completely unable to form sentences prior to this. And everything began slowly setting down back into reality. The entire come down took the better part of an hour though, with the 8 or so minutes after the initial blast. I spent a fair amount of time trying to catch my breath and try to exist again during this period. Previously, I've had my first breakthrough experience with 5-MeO DMT, which was like being cast into a white void of nirvana. It was an absolutely incredible experience. I've broken through on DMT a handful of times, each very unique in its own right, with a never-ending assortment of mind-boggling intricacies. But 5-MeO malt was more akin to the 5-MeO DMT nirvana feeling, except that it had a tremendous amount more content, so to speak. it is very unique in its effects. To be honest, this is kind of what I thought the psychedelic experience would seem like. Throughout my last year of usage, I haven't even come close. Today, it seems like I accidentally catapulted myself right into the bullseye. Postamble. I realise this post is incredibly long, and it may not translate well because of the individual nature of our psychedelic experiences, and the words 5-MeO malt is stronger than DMT may seem like blasphemy, but I've become a true believer. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you for reading this far. The too long didn't read edition. 5-MeO malt is not to be taken lightly. Holy fuck. That is the biggest understatement of the century. I've wanted to cover this substance for ages now. Quite a while ago I did a report on 5-MeO Dalt, which is closely related to 5-MeO malt. They've both been sold online as a designer drug, they're a research chemical, and they're much lesser known in the psychonaut community. Just to add a bit of extra context to this report, at the top of the guy's post, and big ups to, what's it called again? Tryptonautical for posting this, because I've been trying to find a good 5-MeO malt experience to share with you for ages now, because there's quite a few about, not that many. Obviously this came out 4 years ago, so in that space of time there's been more that have been posted, but they're just not very in-depth, and this is one of the more in-depth ones, and I'd love to stumble upon even more in-depth ones in the future. So this guy, he mentioned in the trip report that he actually took 10 milligrams of 5-MeO malt, and that's pretty crazy, isn't it? And that's such a low amount of the chemical, and it can produce these extreme awakening experiences that seem to go beyond 5-MeO DMT in a sense, or at least from what people describe who've used both. A lot of the people who've used both attribute deeper awakenings to 5-MeO malt than regular 5-MeO DMT and just regular NN-DMT. But originally this guy he says in his 5-MeO malt history, first time he did 5 milligrams, didn't get much of anything, used a meth pipe, probably wasted it all. Second time, 10 milligrams Yokan. Felt like there were lots of lights floating around, very warbly, but enjoyable. Warbly, I like that. Definitely a unique experience. Third time, 10 milligram Yokan. Felt like the world started to melt a bit. Unexpectedly intense experience for only 10 milligrams. This is when I realised how powerful this stuff actually was, or so I thought. And it goes on to reiterate, I'm not saying this to brag, for once, but I mean every single syllable when I say that the most profound and intense experience I've had amongst all of those does not even come close to the sheer intensity of the 10 milligrams of 5-MeO malt that I had tonight. One thing I should add though is that the guy specifies that he took 3 MMC, which is it's like a cathinone, and a cathinone is like chemically similar to ephedrine, caffeine, and other amphetamines. So this 3 MMC, he ended up taking, how much did he take? 300 milligrams taken a few hours before the experience. So could that have amplified his breakthrough? Is that what actually pushed him over the edge with this experience? Because obviously all the other ones, he didn't manage to break through. Obviously, the more experience you have with a substance, the more likely you are to break through, especially with heavy psychedelics like these. And I must reiterate that from what I've read, this is very, very much just for serious psychonauts who are very mentally stable, have got the shit together. This is not for the preteens at all who are wanting to experiment with psychedelics. Even obviously you can experiment with psychedelics healthily, but mate, please, for God's sake, just stick to the classical psychedelics like LSD, shrooms, and that. If you're just getting started out with this stuff, there's no need to dive into the deep end here. This is mega stuff. I wouldn't even do this personally for a very long time. I've not even tried 5-MeO DMT. Don't even think I'm ready for that yet. I'm just being honest with myself. Got your whole life ahead of you, haven't you? Slow and steady wins the race. Worst thing you can be doing is like, well, I'm really interested in taking psychedelics. I've just found this 5-MeO malt online. I'm going to take 500 milligrams for no reason. It's like, that is just asking for PTSD, hell realms, and all sorts of shit that you don't really want to experience and right now that you're not ready to face up to, because obviously at some point you do have to face your fears when it comes to psychedelics, going down the deep spiritual path. Not everyone will go down the deep spiritual path. Some people just use psychedelics for general personal development, working through trauma, depression, but some people will go all the way to like awakening, God consciousness, infinity, non-duality, whatever you want to call it, that sort of stuff. deeper down the rabbit hole than most people go. Yeah, this is definitely reserved for those sort of people, and this is not something to be messed with at all, I don't think. Yeah, so this 3-MMC, possibly, I don't know if it brought about his breakthrough, but it definitely, I mean, it must have impacted his experience in some sense. From what I've read, 3-MMC is quite similar to the compound mephedrone as well, so it must be like it must have been absolutely buzzing off his head. To be fair, 300 milligrams is quite a lot. I don't really know much about this substance. Maybe interesting to cover in the future. Obviously, I don't really talk about like stimulants and other stuff like that. I mainly focus on sort of wacky psychedelics and dissociatives and deliriums and stuff like that, because I'm just more interested in them. And personally, my main shtick with this channel, if you haven't noticed, is all about the mystical stuff, the deep insights, profound revelations and all that. Whether they're true or not, still very interesting to read about, I believe. But yeah, he also mentions he has a few small alcoholic drinks as well. I don't really think that'll have made much of an impact. If anything, alcohol is probably more likely to diminish a breakthrough, because yeah, alcohol is a depressant, and I've found that it can actually sort of dilute the psychedelic visuals and the headspace, because it's alcohol in itself isn't a consciousness heightener, is it? It lowers your consciousness, makes you a bit more sort of animalistic in a sense. If you get a few fucking cascales down your gullet and you start bouncing around town, fucking sparking people out outside Mackies and shit, that's sort of stuff that alcohol does to you. So I wouldn't really combine that with psychedelics at all, and it can be very dangerous as well, very dangerous. Alcohol doesn't have a lot of great combos, really. Just something I think you should be avoiding, to be fair. So yeah, I'd like to experience. If I ever do experience this substance, I'll be sure to let you know. That'll be a whole new arc in the Vivec saga, I imagine, if I ended up doing this. But yep, I'll try and find some more. And yep, in the meantime, do your own research and that. That's another thing I can't stress enough. Is obviously I love sharing information with you and educating people, whipping out the knowledge that I have and the stuff I find online. But really, if you're serious about this stuff, do a lot of your own research as well. Go on the Psychonaut Reddit, go on forums like Blue Light, DMT Nexus, Shroomery, Erowid, read up on stuff yourself, read books and that on psychedelic experience, and just do as much extracurricular research as possible, because that will sort you out big time. If you get serious about this stuff, you're going to want to marry the theoretical and the practical aspects of the psychedelic experience so that you can have a good time, lad. So, yeah, the fact that I am now stumbling over my words means it's time to put this to bed. And I will see you guys in the next video. Don't know what it'll be, but I'm thinking it's this thing I've been debating making a video on, and that's why is ketamine so popular in the UK, which not a lot of people talk about, and I have a lot of things to say about that. A lot of cool research I've done online. I've been researching it for quite a bit, so I want to make that into a bit more of an extensive, well-edited video. So that might be out next week, but I could bosh it in and get it out earlier, but we will see. But until then, take care and happy tripping, guys.